show themselves approved unto God.
Okay, here we are. We're at the top 10 reason number 10 why Jesus Christ isn't God, and why I say he is God. Okay, of course, God cannot be a man. He has not been born, and he was not created. He is pre-existing. There's no question about that. However, the question is, can God come down as a man and commune with his creation, show himself in such a way as to reveal his nature to the very ones that he created? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to first go through and see where God can be a plurality, where he can be what they call a compound unity, okay? And then we're going to see where he has become a man in Scripture, definite, unambiguous, explicit chapters where he has become a man. And that's what we're going to do with the first reason. We're going to see where the possibility does exist. So let's start with Genesis chapter 1, the very beginning. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us through a little bit of Hebrew. Not that I'm a Hebrew scholar, but I understand a little bit, just enough to know what I'm talking about here. And I would like to show the word in the beginning, God. The word God is the English word for deity. Now, the Hebrew word for God, deity, is Elohim. Okay, which this, like I said, this is the Hebrew writing, but here's the word for Elohim. The him is plural, okay? It's like our S. God had a perfect opportunity to use the singular for the word God, which was Elohah. Instead, he used the plural, which is very interesting. The very first chapter, the very first verse, the third word into the sentence, inspiring Moses to write, he chose the word Elohim instead of Elohah. So we see here where there is a possibility of a plurality. Now this is carried through all throughout Scripture. This is used thousands of times in Scripture for the word God. Now let's go down to Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, and it says, "And God said, let us make man in our image." Now that's interesting because he's using the word us. Let's go to the Hebrew here and see what he's saying. Okay, here is the word for us make in the Hebrew. Na asa, making it an us make. So we see there where he's choosing again a word that stands for more than one. It's not let me make, I think I will make. It's let us make. Now let's go down to verse 27, reading in context, where we find out what image God made man in. It says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them." So we see here in Genesis chapter 1 the possibility of a plurality. This word is used more often, but I'm just choosing the very first chapter for the sake of time. You know, obviously we can't go over every verse. If you want, as I said, I have a website that I'm launching, and you'll be able to go on there and we'll be able to have discussions if you like. So now then, let's go see where God took on humanity, took on human flesh, became a man, and communed with Abraham. Genesis chapter 18, the setting is Abraham is sitting in the tent door. We know it's Abraham because of chapter 17. But later on we'll see his name, just a couple verses down. Now this word Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, all uppercase. Whenever we see that in Scripture, it stands for the Hebrew word Yud He Vav He. The letters are a Yud, a He, a Vav, and a He. And this stands for the actual name of God, which is, we think, pronounced Yahweh or Jehovah. So all throughout, we're going to see this word Lord used in capital letters when it's referring to God. So we see that he appeared to him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. In verse 2, saw 3 men standing by him. And then he speaks to them. And he tells them not to pass away. If he has found favor in their sight, please do not pass away. And then he says, let a little water, I pray thee, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. So here we see that Abraham now is offering to wash the feet of these three men. So we see that they have a physical being, a physical property to them. Then he says in verse 5, he says, I will fetch a morsel of bread and comfort your hearts. So then if we go all the way down to verse 8, we see where he took butter, milk, and the calf, and sat it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Verse 9, we see where they're asking, where is Sarah, thy wife? And then verse 10, he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. In verse 12, we see where Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also. And then we see again that word, all uppercase, the Lord said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? So we see that the Lord, as we saw in 1 Chronicles, chapter 28, verse 9, that the Lord knows all things, he could hear what Sarah was saying in her heart. And he says, is anything too hard for the Lord? And then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not. And then the Lord said, nay, but you did laugh. In verse 17, we see now the Lord talking directly to Abraham. Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham shall become a great nation? But what's really important to look at is, it says here, and the Lord went his way as soon as he left, communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. Now, we see that the Lord has gone his way, and Abraham has left and gone his way. So we obviously can see that they both, if Abraham returned unto his place, that they both were walking. And if they were both walking, that means that God was walking with Abraham. In Psalm 139, where it says, verse 7, it says, where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend unto heaven, you are there, and if I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. So we can see that God is a spirit. God the Father is a spirit. In John chapter 4, verse 24, Jesus says to the woman at the well, God is spirit, and he's to be worshipped in spirit and truth, flesh and blood, because we see that he walked away. So here we have, in Genesis chapter 1, the possibility of a plurality, and in Genesis chapter 18, we see definite evidence of God walking with Abraham, talking with Abraham in the form of a human being. Now, I would like to point out in Job chapter 13, verse 8, in the English, it says, will ye accept his person? Will ye contend for God? Now, it's very interesting because the word person in the Hebrew is translated faces. And it's a plural. It's penein. So it again is a plural. So we see again in Job chapter 18 where God is spoken of as a plural. So I think for now we see that there is definitely a possibility that God is able to become a man and that he is a plurality.
Study to show thyself